1,
2,
3,
4.
Monster movie.
Fun time, go! Monster movie.
Fun time, go. Monster
Movie.
Fun time.
Go!
Monster movie. Fun time, go.
With Precious D and Honeybee.
Fun time, go!
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Monster Movie Fun Time Go, or if it's your first time, welcome. I am one of your hosts, Honey Bee.
And I'm the other one of your hosts, Precious D.
We're a couple of best friends making our way through some kaiju movies. We started in 1933 with King Kong, and we've made it all the way to the 80s, baby. And we are doing a remake today. A remake of a movie that we already did watch. So, if you're interested in that, please go and check out that episode. Today we're doing the Blob remake.
Yes, from 1988. And somehow we skipped Beware the Blob from 1972.
Oh, what?
Yes, that was a sequel to the original Blob. This is a remake.
no.
That one was a sequel. So maybe we'll go back and pick that up and make that like a Patreon episode or something. We have a Patreon, folks. Patreon.com/MMFTG. If you want to support the show, you can follow us there. If you become a patron, you will get ad-free versions of our episodes. You'll get early access whenever I can manage it. I'm usually editing these things at the last minute. And you'll get some patron exclusive episodes that are only available to members. Right now, we're going on our Patreon, we're going through the lyrics of the song Science Fiction Double Feature from Rocky Horror Picture Show. And we're looking at all the movies that are referenced in that song. When we get done with that, we'll do something else. Maybe we'll do Beware of the Blob.
Yeah,
that was from
that's a good idea.
1972, and it is, I saw it once long ago. I think I had it on VHS. It is not great. It was directed by
Ew.
Larry Hagman, who was known for being on I Dream of Jeannie and Dallas. He was not known for being a director, but he directed. It's meant to be a comedy. That one is supposed to be a comedy.
Oh, no.
You can be the judge of whether or not it's actually funny. This one is not, although it has some funny moments, this one is not a comedy.
Yeah. The original Blob was really good, too. Like, it was a
Yeah.
pretty good movie, so I'm bummed to hear that Beware the Blob wasn't so good, but I am glad that we are doing this remake. I did not even know it existed until I saw it on the list. I am so excited to walk through this movie with you.
Oh, really? This is another one I
Yeah.
saw in the theater when it first came out. And
Dang!
I'm pretty sure I used to own it on VHS too. I now own a digital copy. I think you can get a Blu-ray. Yeah, you can get like a collector's edition Blu-ray of it, or you can buy or rent it on all the various streaming services. It's not streaming free anywhere, but I think it's worth it.
Big
It was it's in color. It's from 1988. Directed by Chuck Russell. Screenplay by Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont. It is 95 minutes, cost $10 million, and made $8.2 million.
Well, damn.
So
That's a little
that's a
disappointing.
shame. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know. I'm not sure if some other big movies came out at that same summer or what the deal was. I'm not sure why it did so poorly.
Yeah, I mean, how do you feel about this movie? What are your initial thoughts of this movie?
Oh, I love it. I think it's
Same.
I enjoy it, and I think it's a good remake. It's definitely a lot more brutal than the original.
Than the original. Yeah, and the storyline's like definitely more complicated, but that's what makes it so good, is that they like modernized it for the times. It's definitely a
Yeah.
movie from the 80s, and You know, it was so good. They did such a great job. The things that they keep in the movie to keep it true to the original was perfect. The things that they added, I thought were perfect as well. I'm really sad to hear that it didn't do better.
Yeah. Well, I think we could quickly play what is this movie really about?
All right, hit me with it.
Because what it's really about is a little, even though it's the same basic story, there's a little bit of a change that makes what it's really about different from what the original was really about, which is part of what you were talking about of updating it and making it relevant to the times. The original, like so many other science fiction movies of its time, had to do with fear of foreign invasion, whether it be a straight up invasion or an infiltration. It had to do with an outside threat. This movie has to do with more of an internal threat from our own government. It's more of a conspiracy theory type thing. This was made in 1988. It is right towards the end of the Reagan administration.
Bye, bitch.
On August 12th, 1986, Ronald Reagan famously said,
"The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help."
I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Fuck you, Ronald Reagan. Fuck you to hell. He also did everything he could to make sure those words were true. But that is sort of the premise of this movie, because it turns out that the government is responsible for the Blob existing. It's their fault. You can't trust the government. The government is actually a threat to its citizens. And I'm not saying that that isn't sometimes true, but it's not always true, and it doesn't have to be true. And the same people who, as I indicated a moment ago, the same people that are telling you not to trust the government are also the reason you can't trust the government. And so, maybe just be better. Maybe just do a better job at being the government. Fuck you, Ronald Reagan. Fuck you. The only reason I'm sorry that Reagan had Alzheimer's is he got to forget that he was president, and I still have to remember it.
Oh my gosh. I was not alive, so lucky me. I
know. You don't know. But you are still suffering the consequences of that motherfucker's policies. We're still feeling the impact of his shit policies. But that's neither here nor there. The Blob, ladies and gentlemen.
So, the Blob.
The Blob.
Ooh, before we get started, listen to this. This will make you feel better. I was just cracking open a cold soda.
Well, I was just about to do the same thing. All right, the movie stars Kevin Dillon as Brian Flagg, Shawnee Smith as Meg Penny, Donovan Leitch as Paul Taylor, Jeffrey DeMunn as Sheriff Herb Geller, Candy Clark as Fran Hewitt, Joe Seneca as Dr. Christopher Meadows, Del Close as Reverend Meeker. Remind me to talk about Del in a minute. Shanna Spellman as Mrs. Margaret Penny, Bo Billingsley as Moss Woodley, Art LaFleur as a pharmacist / Tom Penny, Ricky Paul Golden as Scott Jeske, Paul McCrane as Deputy Bill Briggs, Michael Kenworthy as Kevin Penny, Douglas Emerson as Eddie Beckner, Robert Axelrod as Jennings, Bill Mosley as the soldier in the sewer, Erica Eleniak as Vicky DeSoto, Jack Rader as Colonel Templeton Hargis, and Jack Nance as Doctor. Del Close is more famous for not for being an actor per se, but for being a pioneering, influential force in the world of improvisational theater and improv comedy. He laid out a lot of the principles that people still use for that. And more interesting to us in this moment, he was in Beware the Blob, playing an eye patch wearing hobo. I don't know if it's just a coincidence that he's in this one or if he was cast specifically because of that. Or it could be he was auditioning with other people and somebody said, hey, he was in the other one. Let's choose him. Who knows? Who knows? So that's our cast. Let's get into the plot, I guess.
Let's do it. This was actually... Oh, what?
I was just looking at some notes on the production, and it says, actor Del Close had been scheduled to direct a mock opera about Ronald fucking Reagan at New York's Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts during the filming of The Blob. However, the production was canceled, and he was unexpectedly available to audition for The Blob.
Nice.
So, there you go. Ronald goddamn Reagan. Here's the plot from Wikipedia. Thank you, Wikipedia.
Thanks, Wikipedia.
A meteorite crashes near Arborville, California. An elderly vagabond discovers, that's a nice way of putting it, discovers within the sphere a massive slime mold-like substance that adheres to his hand. I want to talk about the opening
so
first,
good.
though.
Yeah, let's do it.
The opening is a little interesting. I want to say weird.
Like the football game stuff?
Well, before it gets to that,
okay.
It starts off with these shots of a town that appears to be abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
They keep showing us empty streets and we kind of hear the wind blowing. But then it turns out that it's not abandoned. It's just the entire town
is at the game.
Is at the football game. Is at the high school football game.
Annoying.
So that was kind of interesting. But it is also, it's implied throughout the film that the town isn't doing well. So I think this implication of abandonment and well, there's going to be some devastation coming, but it seems like it's a ghost town at first. And I think that economically it's on the verge of becoming that. And they're sure it's like a ski town. And they're sure, though, that as soon as the weather turns cold, the tourists are going to come and things are going to pick up. But I've got the feeling that it wasn't really cold enough last year, or it hasn't been cold as soon as it should have been, or, people are concerned. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We do get, we get two Chekhov's things in this movie. We get a Chekhov's snow-making truck and Chekhov's washed out bridge. So I appreciated those. Mark those off on your bingo card.
That's funny.
So we established some characters at the football game. The cheerleader, Shawnee Smith, the football guy that likes her.
Yeah.
And we get a little bit of the rebel kid.
Yeah, which
the bad
this guy,
boy.
where do I know this guy from? He looks so familiar to me. Who's the motorcycle kid? Like what is he famous for?
I see, as I was making my notes, I wrote down Ethan Hunt ? And then I looked him up like, no, it's not Ethan Hunt. It's Kevin Bradley Dillon. He is best known for portraying Johnny Drama Chase on the HBO comedy series Entourage.
No idea.
Bunny in the war film Platoon, and John Densmore in the musical biopic The Doors.
Oh, all right, cool. I know this guy. I'm like, this guy looks so familiar to me.
But the thing is, he does look like a couple of other people who were making movies at that time. He was a certain type.
A little typecasted here.
So he's teenager, leather jacket, very 80s shirt that he's wearing,
very 80s mullet that he's wearing. that too, and he's about to turn 18. The sheriff warns him next month.
You
get to go to big
trouble.
boy jail now.
You won't be going to And I think now the deputy's a real asshole. I think the sheriff is actually just trying to give him a warning.
Yeah, this is one thing. Yeah,
I don't think he's gloating
totally
about it. He's trying to tell him, straighten up, kid. I don't want to have to send you to real jail.
Totally, which I feel like is kind of one of those things that they kept from the original, because in the original, the sheriff was also like such a good guy. He stood up for the kids. He always like had their back. He trusted them, and I felt like they really kept that. And this with the sheriff is like a really good guy, and he just cares about everybody.
The sheriff was good, but he had an asshole deputy.
Yeah.
In both versions. This sheriff though does not does not do as well. Which is maybe part of the cynicism of the film. I don't know. We'll get to. Oh, so we see what's his name? Brian? Paul's the football player, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Brian Flagg. There's a bridge that has a piece missing. A little wooden bridge over a dried up riverbed. And he wants to jump his bike over it, but then he kind of chickens out the last moment and wipes out and crashes his bike into the ravine and sees the vagabond. The vagabond is collecting cans and sees this happen. So they have a little interaction before we encounter him later with the blob on his hand. But we also set up the idea of jumping across this bridge. Yeah. Then he goes to borrow some tools from this garage where he works part-time, maybe?
Yes, which is also kind of something from the first film-ish.
Yeah. And the guy that owns the place is unlike the original, non-white people exist in this movie because his boss is a black guy. Is he the only one? Maybe. No, the doctor, the government guy is a black guy, the doctor from the government. So we've moved forward into the 80s where non-white people exist. He wants to borrow some tools to fix his bike, and the guy is repairing some snowmobiles. And also, is the truck just there, or is he working on the truck? But we established that there is this truck that makes snow.
Yeah, he's working on it.
And he's using it to cool the beers. But this will become important later on. Anyway, the football player gets tackled bad and uses that as his opportunity to ask out the cheerleader. There's a very 80s scene at the pharmacy where his friend, the other football player, has a date and wants to buy some condoms and runs into the priest while he's waiting for the condoms. So he makes up an excuse that, oh, they're not for me, they're for my friend over there, which is Paul, and he's like, I'm just trying to, he's got a date with this naive girl and he's determined. And I told him, hey, you got to use some protection. He doesn't even want it. They're like, why doesn't he buy? I'm like, oh, it was all I could do to get him to agree to do it. So he's acting like he's trying to be the responsible one and not a horn dog.
I will say though, at least he's like, when he's first telling his friend when they're in the pharmacy, he's like, I'm gonna try to score with that chick tonight. He's like, I want to invest in some protection. I mean, that is pretty amazing. Like, even for the that's great. Can we please bring that back?
It was definitely an 80s thing, especially with, diseases that were not just not getting her pregnant, but there were diseases going around killing people. So there was definitely an effort to get that message out there. But this guy becomes very problematic later on. So he's only mildly responsible. And I think that's really just in his own interest. He's not doing it for anybody else's interest. I'm not going to give that. I'm not going to give this little shit any credit because he is terrible later.
Yeah, he is terrible later. I just I was like, oh well, at least somewhere, sometime, dudes bought condoms.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's also maybe a message from the filmmakers more than from the character. Anyway, three high school students, Brian, Megan, Paul. The guy finds the meteorite. The slime mold comes out and attaches to his hand, which is exactly like in the original.
Yes, and it looks great. It looks amazing right out the gate. I was like, oh fuck yeah, it looks so good. Yeah.
So they've taken Steve McQueen's character from the original and split him into two characters. the football player and the motorcycle
And
kid.
and the bad kid, yeah.
Yeah, because our Shawnee Smith, our lead female, has a date with the football guy, but they accidentally hit the homeless guy, and then the motorcycle guy comes along, and all three of them pick him up and take him to the hospital. After Brian leaves, Paul witnesses the lower half of the rescued man melting from exposure to the blob. As he calls for help,
So
the blob
cool.
drops on top of him. They were acting like they were going to set up a love triangle, and then it quickly turns into... They quickly remove one angle from that triangle.
Yeah,
and
very quickly.
The blob just completely covers him and eats him.
It's so cool.
Yeah, it's a good... Oh, yeah, the effects in this are mostly pretty good.
Yeah, they are. They're fantastic.
Even the ones that are questionable, I think, looked much better at the time.
Definitely.
We're just so acclimated now to blue. We're just so aware, and the things are just so much better now that, the times when they're using a blue screen and stuff, it just seems very obvious to our modern eye, but I think it all looked a lot better at the time.
Definitely. I agree, for sure.
Definitely. And also you're watching it in high def, and it wasn't necessarily intended to be watched that way, so... Anyway, Meg arrives to see Paul being consumed by the growing blob. She tries freeing him, but his arm dissolves off. She tries to pull him out of the blob, and then his arm just comes off in her hand. As I said, this is much more graphic than the original.
Oh, yeah, it is brutal at times. It's amazing.
Meg is thrown against the wall and knocked unconscious. The blob fully dissolves Paul and oozes out of the hospital, where it later eats 2 teenagers making out in a car. I believe those are just 2 random teenagers making out in a car. Then we'll get 2 other teenagers in a different car.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's multiple teens making out in cars in this movie. After Brian and Meg have unsatisfactory encounters with the police, they meet at a diner. Oh, but I skipped the part about the payoff of the condom buying scene.
About the pharmacist?
Yes, is when Paul shows up to pick up Meg. She says, "Come in and meet my dad," and her dad is the pharmacist, and he thinks that the condoms were for Paul, and he's been told Paul was planning to take advantage of this naive girl he had a date with. But somehow we don't see the fall. Somehow Paul gets out of that situation alive.
Yeah, just the next scene, he's just driving with the daughter, like.
Yeah, and he's like, it was just a misunderstanding. So he probably was like, "What? No, I don't know. Those weren't." He probably successfully talks his way out of it. But then we see that asshole on his date, who he is trying to get drunk so he can take advantage of her.
And then when she's unconscious,
he has an entire wet bar in the trunk of his car that somehow is not all broken as he's driven along. And he talks to her about, "But you're wearing my ring. Come on. Hey, let me get you another drink." And it's not even clear that she knows that there's alcohol or how much alcohol is in the drink. And another thing, he opens up his trunk and there's this whole ridiculous bar that he's got back there, and a box full of class rings on chains. Which, I don't know where he's getting these class rings, but class rings are not cheap. So maybe he's just buying knockoff ones in bulk from China or something.
Yeah, kind of like that scene from Zombieland where the girls are buying the fake rings and then scamming people with them.
Yeah. So he apparently is planning to scam multiple girls by making them each think they're special by giving them each his class ring
Disgusting.
on a chain, as if this is not going to come up at some point. But he never has the time to suffer the consequences of his actions. He goes back with the drinks. The girl appears to be passed out.
But she's fucking dead, right? Like, she's dead,
She
right?
is. Yeah, the blob is already, while he wasn't looking, the blob has gotten to her. But he doesn't know this, and he starts, talking to himself while he's unbuttoning her.
It's really gross.
It's gross. It's also a little weird why he's taking so long. But of course, the reason he's taking so long is because it's a movie and they got to reveal the horrible thing that's actually happening. But
Oh God, it's not, it's an
but yeah,
uncomfortable-
he's planning to take advantage of this unconscious girl. But it turns out the Blob is already kind of eating her from the inside out.
Heyo, which is better than you'll
It is
ever
like-
do, buddy.
Damn it. So I guess it has crawled in through the window while he wasn't looking and crawled up her sleeve or something. Anyway, it kills him too. They both end up dead.
Yeah, he like reaches into her like bra to like grope her, and the Blob just comes out like yeah.
And he's like, ah! So it's like there
And
was a
that
mouse
is
trap
what
up there.
happens, boys and girls, when you
Yes.
don't get consent. That will happen to anybody who doesn't get consent ever. So don't do it because you will be blobbed, you little.
So yes,
motherfuckers.
a less than subtle message from the filmmakers. 1, use protection. 2, get consent,
Yes,
or you will get blobbed.
or you'll get blobbed.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouthwatering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Brian and Meg try to tell the police what happened, but they fail. They meet at Meg sneaks out of the house and meets him at the diner, where Meg tells
Yeah.
Brian about the Blob. Brian's disbelief is shattered when the diner's handyman George is violently pulled into the sink's drain.
This is such a cool death. This is when shit really starts getting like really brutal. Like this is kind of the first moment we get like a lot of blood splatter and weird shit, and it's so cool that he just like gets sucked into the sink. I don't know how it works, but I loved it.
Yeah, he thought the sink was just clogged up. So the Fran, the diner owner, she was trying to close up, but they come in and he's, oh, please, I'm hungry. So she makes him a sandwich and is being very nice. We saw earlier that the sheriff likes her. He tried to ask her out, but she didn't exactly say no. She was just too busy.
She said that she says she can't because she's got to keep the diner open, but then she passes him a note that says, I get off at 11.
Ah, I guess I missed that. I must have blinked.
Yeah,
I did see
she
him
writes
with
it
the-
on his ticket.
On his right. I saw him looking at I did see him looking at the receipt later.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it pulls the poor cook into the drain.
George, no! It was so cool. This death
Yeah.
and then the telephone booth death are like...
Yes.
Eee!
The increasingly
They're so
large creature
cool.
pursues them into the diner's walk-in freezer, but it retreats after entering the freezer. That's just like the original.
Mhm.
After consuming the diner's owner, Fran Hewitt, and Sheriff Geller, the Blob re-enters the sewers. But
No.
Fran runs into a phone booth, which they still had in the 80s. This kind of reminded me of The Birds. Have you ever seen Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds?
I have, but it's been a very, very long time.
Even if you haven't seen it, there's a good chance you've seen this clip, because that's one they tend to show, where the heroine flees into a phone booth to get away from the birds, and they're just kind of flinging themselves against the phone booth to try to get to her.
Creepy.
So the Blob just surrounds this phone booth, and we knew the sheriff was going to try to go see her. Well, the sheriff's decomposing or not decomposing, but dissolving body gets pressed up. There's just against the glass. There's just enough of him left that we can clearly see his badge. We know it's the sheriff. So the Blob has already gotten him, and he gets pressed up against the glass of the phone booth before the whole thing collapses inward and she gets dissolved by the Blob. Yeah, it was a really good effect.
It was so good.
A very good edit going from the live woman to what must have been a dummy that gets crushed. So the Blob goes back into the sewers. Meg and Brian return to the police station where the dispatcher tells them Deputy Briggs is near the meteor landing site. They discover a military operation led by a scientist, Dr. Meadows, who orders the town and the two teams quarantined. Yeah, they're all wearing those hazmat suits, big white suits and helmets and everything. And Brian is very suspicious and doesn't trust them because they're from the government. This guy acts very nice and kind at first, but he's not. While Brian escapes, Meg is taken to town. Yeah, they put them both in the back of a truck and want to take them back to town, but Brian jumps out the back. He's like, fuck this, I don't trust these guys.
She's like, what is your problem? And he's like, I have a problem with authority.
Yeah, and I can't remember if he brings it up at this point or brings it up later, but he's like, how did they know? How did they get here so quickly? How did they know the meteor was there? And, you know, meteors land all the time. You don't just assume they're going to be contaminated. The government doesn't show up every time a meteor crashes and lands, quarantine the place. So he's very suspicious, and rightfully so.
Unless the meteor is a hammer that the god of thunder dropped in the desert. Sorry.
Well, yeah. Then they'll set up a whole little tent thing and everything. She learns that her younger brother, Kevin, has snuck into the movie theater with his friend, Eddie.
Which we do get a little bit of Kevin and his friend Eddie in the beginning, and he tells his mom, the friend Eddie tells his mom, tells the friend's mom, oh, we're gonna go to the movies. We're gonna see the slasher, this movie, and my brother's an usher, so he can get us in. So we already know that they're gonna go.
But this kid's a damn idiot, because you don't tell your friend's mother that you're planning to go see an R-rated movie.
But thank God that he did.
Well, yeah, but no, but he ends up lying because she says, no, you can't go. I'm saying if he had just said, oh, we're just going to go see a science fiction movie, or we're just going to go see a monster movie. But he starts telling her, no, he starts telling her how graphic it's going to be. And she objects and says, you can't go see that. Or she says, they're not going to let you in to see that. And he's like, oh, no, my brother will let us in. So he admits that, no, I'm not allowed to see it, but I have a loophole.
And I'm going to tell the adult that's taking care of me right now.
Technically, in that situation, his brother would be a guardian over 18, so it would be okay for him to be there.
Oh, my gosh.
Somebody over 18 has to accompany you to those movies. It's probably okay if the person accompanying you is also working at the time. Anyway, they go to the movie. So this is also right out of the original that the Blob attacks a movie theater.
Yay! Which is important for us.
You gotta
because
do
it's
it.
You have to. It's like such a huge, important scene. Even before I had even seen the actual movie, I knew that scene just because I had seen it in clips and stuff online. Yeah.
You know, that's part of what makes this a good remake, because a good remake has to have enough of the original that it's still the same story.
Yeah.
But you've got to add enough, but you have to add enough new stuff to make it worthwhile.
Totally.
Otherwise, we could just watch the original. We don't need to see your remake.
Yeah, I feel like they did such a great job with this movie.
Like, I never understood the idea of when they did that, what they called a shot-for-shot remake of Psycho. Like, why? I eventually saw it, but that's how they were advertising it. That this is going to be a shot-for-shot remake of Psycho. It's going to have the same script, the same scenes, the same shots, probably. And I've never sat down and looked at them side by side, but probably the same camera angles and everything. I'm like, then why are you doing it? The difference is it's going to be in color with different actors. But why?
Yeah.
And I think the rest of the country agreed, and I don't think it did that well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was Vince Vaughn and Anne Heche, I believe.
Oh my gosh, really? I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So, but this movie successfully, I think, pays tribute to the original and gives you the things you're expecting from the original while still putting in enough new things.
Totally.
That
100%.
it's worth watching, and also
it's fun,
surprising you. And it does have it has a slightly different viewpoint in that the threat is it's reflecting the current fears and concerns of society rather than just repeating the old ones.
Totally.
And it throws in some twists like the sheriff doesn't make it out.
Yeah.
You know?
Definitely. Yeah.
Because
so good.
because in this movie the authorities are not to be relied on, so even the nice authority is useless. So anyway, the Blob enters the theater, killing several staff and audience members. Meg arrives as the audience flees the theater, rescuing Eddie and Kevin.
Well, not exactly, because they both don't make it.
Not for long. Yes, this movie, not afraid.
Not
It's
afraid
not the
to
first
kill a kid.
Not afraid to kill a kid, but most of the movies that we've seen, maybe all the movies we've seen so far, kill the kid off camera.
This one, don't give a fuck.
This one, nope. Eat that baby.
Eat him. It's so good too. They do like a similar effect where, like, you know, he jumps out at Meg and he's all blobbed up, and it's such a good effect. And because it's the kid, it makes it so much creepier, and it's so good.
Brian learns the Blob is a biological warfare experiment. He learns this by going back to get his bike. But he's gone back to get his bike, and then he overhears the government guys talking.
Mm-hmm.
It's was created during the Cold War. This is still we're still in the middle of the Cold War. It grew into a mixture of bacteria mutated from outer space radiation. So apparently they had some experiment where they took some virus or bacteria, launched it into space to see what would happen.
Let's
and
see
then
what'll happen.
tracked it when it came back down. It seemed like a very weird
and then
experiment.
It just started sucking people up and getting bigger.
Yeah. This is also similar, though, in concept to the Andromeda strain.
To the what?
The Andromeda strain.
Mm.
It's a Michael Crichton book that was turned into a movie twice that has to do with a virus from outer space.
Mm.
It is also yet another example, one of many cases where Michael Crichton just rewrites Frankenstein, but that's a discussion for another time.
Oh my gosh.
Meadows decides to trap the Blob in the sewers, even if that means allowing Meg, Kevin, and Eddie to die. Brian manages to evade military personnel by driving his motorcycle into the sewers when he is found.
Yep, it's true.
When he's found by the military, I think he runs away and he drives his bike in the sewers.
Mm-hmm.
Meg and Kevin flee from the Blob in the sewers, but Eddie is consumed.
Bye, Eddie!
Kevin escapes by scaling a pipe to the surface, while Meg is saved by Brian. He confronts Meadows in front of the townsfolk. Oh, but this is good. So they're trying to get up out of the sewer.
Yeah, and fucking Meadows.
One of the military guys ends up trapped down there with him, and Meadows just close up the manhole and park a truck over it.
They're expendable.
But we know because of things that happened earlier that the military guys have a little pack of explosives on them. So he takes the guy's explosives and puts it up there by the
Kablooey.
manhole cover and blows it off.
He kablooey's that manhole.
Yeah. And he comes out and confronts him in front of everybody. And Briggs, the deputy, exposing Meadows' true intentions. And here we see the deputy's not a complete dick. Because first the deputy points his gun at him. He's like, hey, what are you doing? You know, because he just blew something up. But then when he sees that the army guys are about to just shoot this kid, he puts his gun on them and is like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You can't just shoot this teenager.
For fuck's sake.
I mean, he's putting a gun at him but because he wants him not to blow up anything. Yeah. Meadows attempts to convince everyone Brian is contaminated and must die. When the plan fails, Meadows tries to shoot Brian, only for his own creation to kill him via oozing into his chemical suit and violently dragging him into the sewer. And the military attempts to blow it up with grenades and other explosives. And one of the military guys was not happy with Meadows in the first place because he was like, you know, seal it up. He's like, I got men down there. He's like, doesn't matter. So he was not happy with that order. Yeah. So as soon as Meadows out of the picture, he's like, all right, kill this fucking Blob.
There's this part where like when they finally figure it out, like she's like, it's the cold, and I'm like, why did it take her this long? Like, doesn't she remember the freezer? Weren't they in the freezer in the beginning of the movie in the fucking restaurant, and it took her this long to figure it out?
I think she already knew. She's just kind of telling everybody else.
Oh,
she just haven't had the opportunity.
Okay. I was like, wow, did you really wait for the whole... That was in the beginning of the movie, bitch. You waited this whole time to tell anybody that?
Right.
But, okay, I guess that makes sense.
Well, I think in the original, though, it does take him a while to figure out why it retreated. Mm-hmm. He's like, oh, that's... the kind of light bulb goes off like, oh, that's why it left us alone in the cooler. Because it doesn't like the cold. Get all the fire extinguishers. Remember, the whole town gathers up every fucking fire extinguisher.
yeah, I forgot about that.
The principal's like, there's a whole shitload of them at the school.
Yeah.
So take my keys. So they try and blow it up, but it only succeeds in enraging the creature as it bursts from the sewers and feasts on the population.
Yes, grow, my little blob, grow.
Reverend Meeker proclaims the scene to be the prophesied end of the world. Now, they missed a part here.
Of the world as we know it.
Meeker comes across the wrecked diner earlier and finds a couple of... I'm not sure what caused this. I don't remember now, but a couple of pieces of the blob are frozen. There's a bunch of ice spilled on the floor, and there's a little bit of little frozen chunks of blob. And he finds a little mason jar and picks up the little pieces and puts it in the jar and takes it. And he's not even, at this point, he hasn't seen the blob and isn't even sure what this is. It's just different colored from the other ice, and he for whatever reason he just
pretty
thinks this is something.
Ooh, shiny.
Yeah. He thinks it's important and it should be kept. So at this point, the Reverend says that this is the prophesied end of the world, after which a failed flamethrower attack sets him ablaze.
Oh my god.
Meg saves him with a fire extinguisher and also shoots the blob with it. When the creature backs off, she realizes it cannot tolerate cold. So yeah, maybe she is only realizing, maybe she's just telling people, or maybe she's only realizing at this moment, oh, that's why it left us alone earlier. Mm-hmm. The survivors retreat to the town hall and hold the blob off with furniture barricades and fire extinguishers, but it is a losing battle. It engulfs half the building and devours Briggs. Brian goes to the town's garage and gets a snowmaker truck that has canisters of liquid nitrogen attached. As the blob, and there it is, Chekhov's snowmaker.
Chekhov's snowmaker truck.
As the blob is about to consume Meg and her family, Brian shoots snow at it. Angered, the blob turns its attention towards him and knocks the truck over in retaliation, also knocking him unconscious.
No!
Meg lures the blob away from Brian towards the canisters, which she has rigged with an explosive charge taken from a dying soldier. The blob is about to overrun both Brian and Meg when the charge goes off. Okay, I'm going to back up for a minute. I was loving this, and it's been a while since I'd seen it, so I kind of forgot. I was like, oh, this is great. Meg is going to save the day. She's going to be the big hero.
Well, not exactly.
She puts the charges down between the canisters and starts to jump off of the thing and gets her foot caught in the strap and hits the side of it. And I'm like, God damn it.
Because bitches always be tripping over nothing.
The woman's going to be the hero and she's going to save the guy. No, they have to have her fuck up just a little bit so
she
that
can be saved.
So she can be saved. So he can manage to extricate himself from the truck just in time to come untangle her. So they kind of saved the day together, but I would have liked it better if she had been allowed to have the final hero moment.
Final save.
But no, Brian gets last. Saved you last. So the charge goes off, blowing up the canisters and covering the blob in liquid nitrogen, successfully flash freezing it. Moss Woodley stores the blob's crystallized remains in the town's ice house. Later, so this is the last scene, but this is something that if this movie were made now would be a mid-credit or a post-credit scene.
Yeah, totally. You're so right.
It's a little epilogue. The movie's basically over, but we have this little epilogue. Mm-hmm. Later, at a tent meeting church service in a field, Meeker disfigured by his burns and driven insane, preaches a doomsday sermon resembling the Blob's attack. One of the congregation asks him when the day of reckoning will come. Well, he's actually gone backstage while he's finished his sermon, and then a woman starts singing while a man plays an organ, and he goes backstage in the tent and the woman comes back and asks him when, and he simply replies, soon. Then he secretly holds up a glass jar containing a live piece of the Blob, saying,
No!
the Lord will give me a sign.
No!
So it seems like
You fucking wackadoodle!
he thinks it seems like when the Lord gives him a sign, he is going to release the Blob.
Release the
That's
Blob!
his plan. So, I don't know if they actually hoped to have a sequel or they just wanted to give us, because the original Blob ends with the end, question mark.
Question mark?
So I think that's
Is
what they were, what
it?
they were doing. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I don't think they necessarily thought there would be an actual sequel, but who knows? I would love to. I had an idea once for a Blob movie where I was going to try and tie all three of the movies together and answer some questions about, where did it come from, and was it just a thing that happened, or was it actually sent here? Is it actually a weapon?
Yeah.
Now, in this version, it does seem to be the result of an experiment to create a weapon, but it's just this sort of accidentally gets loose. But yeah, they're trying to create a weapon in this version. Mm-hmm. So there you go. That is the Blob from 1988, ladies and gentlemen. Honeybee, thoughts?
5 stars for me. This is such a great remake. 5 stars all the way. Like you said, it's like they kept just enough of the original movie to keep the person, like the fans who love the original movie, to like, those Easter egg moments of like, ooh, that's the thing, or ooh, this is from the original, and just enough other things to surprise you, and like the goriness is so great, and yeah, I freaking love this movie. I highly recommend it. So good.
Yeah, I also give it 5 stars. It has a 63% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Wow, that's crazy. It's so
based
good.
on 27 critic reviews with an average rating of 6 out of 10. Well, I mean, it's I don't know how high it has to be fresh, but that's over 50%. So that's, one of the producers on this film, Jack H. Harris, was a producer of the original Blob.
Oh, nice.
I also wanted to point out that Kevin Dillon is much closer to being a teenager when this movie's made than Steve McQueen was.
Yeah, Steve McQueen was like 48 years old.
Yeah, this guy was in his early 20s playing a teenager. Much more believable. Steve McQueen, I remember at the time we talked about how old he actually was, but yeah, he was not anywhere near being a teenager, and I think he looked even older than
he
what
was even older than he was. Yeah.
I think he was about 30 and he looked 40. Yeah, it was great. It's great. Go see it, rent it, buy it, whatever. I thoroughly recommend it.
Totally. I recommend it so much. Like I cannot give it enough praise. It was so good. It was so entertaining. It was so fun. It was awesome. It way over exceeded my expectations.
Good.
And I love the original, but I just didn't.
Yeah.
I was like, remake,
Folks, if you're enjoying our show, please consider rating and reviewing us on whatever platform
give us some
you are
stars.
using. Recommend us to your friends. Consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/mmftg. You can get some exclusive content that way. Next week, we will be looking at, finally, Godzilla versus Biollante, which I said we were going to do weeks ago, and which we actually recorded weeks ago, and then we had to fill in some things we had missed. Unfortunately, Godzilla versus Biollante is difficult to find, so good luck with that. It's not streaming
Maybe try
anywhere
your
right now.
local Dollar General.
Yes. Maybe your library has it. Possibly you might be able to get it on Hoopla or something like that, which is a library digital service thing that exists. I don't know. Good luck. Until then, I have been Precious D.
And I have been Honey Bee.
Remember to keep calm and take shelter in basements.
And please, don't misuse science.
We won't see you, but you will hear us next time on Monster Movie Fun Time Go.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Monster Movie Fun Time Go. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on your podcasting platform of choice. Our theme song is by the Texicano Folk Rock Punk featuring Lita Lopez. You can support the show, find links to our social media, and even leave us a voice message at anchor.fm/MMFTG.